And now it's time for another chapter in the history of the El Camino Real. And for that chapter, we have come to downtown Los Angeles. We're on historic Olvera Street in front of this beautiful old church. And once again, we are meeting up with our old friend Max. Max, we're spending way too much time together.
Well, maybe we are, but it's a big history.
It is a big history, and we have traveled the El Camino Real together.
Right.
But now it's time for us to talk about another chapter in the history of that famous road, the bell chapter. And we are standing here in front of these bells. We have another historic bell up here, which you're going to explain to us in just a minute. But explain to us how the bells came to be synonymous with El Camino Real.
During the early part of 1900s, the Women's Club of California decided it was time to save the Camino Real as a historic road and to mark it. So they chose Mrs. Forbes, who was a member of their organization, to come up with some type of symbol. And she came up with the bell. It was accepted, and she had it made. And the very first bell is right here behind us.
All right, now where was this bell? Was this bell originally placed right here?
No, this is as far as we know, this is the third location of it. But they have preserved this bell. And this is the original bell. It has the original clapper. I only know of one other bell in California with the original clapper in it.
And the plaque says erected 1906 by the El Camino Real Association. So the idea was the good ladies of California wanted to do something to increase awareness among the citizens of the importance of the history of the El Camino Real. And they came up with the idea of placing these bells along the route of the old highway.
Yes, they did a splendid job of it, considering it cost $25 back in 1908 and 1909. And you think you made $1 a day at that time, so this is quite a sacrifice. And by 1940, they had almost 400 bells placed.
Now, how did they come up with the idea for this particular bell? Was this copied after what would have been a mission bell?
It was supposed to be copied from a bell from Santa Barbara. That has never been proven, but this is all symbols. The bell symbolizes the bell that the Padres rang to attract the Indians. The staff is a simple staff to designate the simple life that the Franciscans lived. So this is symbolism.
And this was a perfect choice for the women to come up with to mark the El Camino Real, but it didn't necessarily, it could have been something else. But it turned out to be the bell, which has become synonymous with El Camino Real.
That's very true.
But you see, this is all part of the growing mystique about these bells in relationship to El Camino Real.
Yes, it is, very much so. And in the early years, the AAA got involved in this, and by doing so, they not only improved the road, but they also improved the bell. They did the first painting of the bell. That's how the bells got green. They wanted to paint them to blend in with the foliage along the road. And so with that, they also put the first road signs up, and that's helped the motorists when they went from one place to another.
So all of this was kind of developing together, this idea of coming to California and tying in with all of this lore of the missions and the bells and the scenic vacation you could take up and down California.
Right. Yes, that's right. And the bells not only had from city to city, but they also had mission to mission. And this, because the automobiles couldn't go very far on gasoline. And this helped out the motorists tremendously.
What do you mean?
By knowing how far it was from point to point.
Now, all of this started in 1906. That's when the bells started being placed up and down the road. Mrs. Forbes, who had just kind of been arbitrarily chosen by the women's clubs to get involved in all this, she really got bitten by the bell bug, didn't she?
She sure did. In 1908, she bought a foundry and was the foundry woman who went into business here in California, and she was the only foundry woman in the world from 1906 to 1950.
The only woman owning and running a foundry.
She made her designs, her molds, she poured the metal, she did everything, and she was very, very successful.
Yeah, I was going to say she also made her fortune, because now you are a collector of Mrs. Forbes' bells, and we have them here.
Yeah.
So she really went from the Camino Real bells to bells that deal with California and California history, didn't she?
Most of the bells relate to missions and California history.
Well, give us a shot here. Let's take one.
She has one here.
Look at this
of the California woman, of a pioneer woman. Here's another one, San Luis Obispo, a 4-inch bell here.
Now, what would people do with these bells when they bought them from her?
Put them out in their patio. They'd hang them up on their porch. This is one for Santa Barbara, and then she had Padre Sarah.
Oh, Father Sarah.
Yes, she was a great follower of his.
So back in this period of California history, these mission bells, this was big business, and this was really kind of saying what California was all about.
Absolutely. She made thousands of these bells and virtually shipped them in many parts of the world.
Now, these are important, these bells right here. Where's the one from 1906?
1906 is
there
right
it is.
here.
So now, these were like little souvenir bells.
Yes.
That people
these
could buy. These were replicas of the ones that had been placed on the road.
Right, that's exactly right. These are silhouette bells. There's 39 of them in a series depicting the history, the social life of and the entertainment of California. They have dolphins, they have dancers, they have sailboats, they have all kinds of trees and bushes. They have the cowboys,
What is this one? I can't tell.
This is 5 swallows of representing the birds in San Juan Capistrano.
Oh, wow. What a collector's item that one is.
Yes.
Where did you get all these bells?
I've been collecting for 15 years. She also made blotters.
Look at this.
That's a blotter. Old-time blotter.
With a bell on the top.
Yes.
And what is this?
That's a Sanctius bell. That's a bell that's supposed to represent when you go to an altar what the priest rings. And then she had bookends.
Ah, mission bookends.
Mission bookends.
So you've only got one of the bookends.
I have the other one at home.
Oh. And we have a
sundial there.
Sundial. And what's this one right here? This is a big one here.
This is a bell of the copy of the one that is in the Dominguez Ranch in Los Angeles area, the Dominguez Ranch area.
And what is this one right here?
This is a Santa Maria bell. There's other names given, and the old adobe in Olivas there has one that says Santa Barbara.
And what are these?
These are...
Would people buy something like this and put it in their home?
Absolutely. These represent the various missions. The San Gabriel.
Oh, each one has a different name on it.
Each one has a name and a date on it.
Wow. So she was on to something.
She was on to something big time, and nobody has ever matched what she has done.
Okay, as our El Camino Real Bell adventure continues, we have now left downtown Los Angeles, Olvera Street, and we've come about 10 miles to Huntington Park. And Max, let me make sure I've got my bell history going right here. Mrs. Forbes and her ladies group started in 1906, and through the end of World War II, they had placed at the high point toward the end of the war, World War II, there were over 400 of these bells all up and down El Camino Real, right?
That's correct.
Okay, then I understand that things started happening to the bells. They started disappearing. They'd fall down, the weather got to some of them, they were vandalized, people hit them with their cars, and it reached a low point of about how many bells?
Probably around 70 or 80.
And there were feeble attempts along the way in the 50s and 60s, good intentioned, although feeble attempts, by various other groups and communities to try and bring the bells back, right?
That's correct. Between individuals, organizations, and the state, they all tried, but unsuccessfully.
Yeah, so the bells were really facing a very bleak future by the mid-1970s. They were down to almost nothing.
Yes, that's true.
All right, now this adventure continues. Come in here, John, and introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm John Kolstad, owner of California Bell Company.
All right, California Bell Company. Explain to us your connection with these bells, because the story just kind of keeps growing and getting better as we go along.
Well, I saw my first bell when I was growing up in Whittier when I was around 8 years old, and when I studied California history in grade school in the 4th grade, we went to a mission and I saw the El Camino Real bells on the highway and in front of the San Gabriel mission, and I fell in love with them. There was a real passion, and I always wanted a bell for my backyard.
Wait a minute, you wanted a bell for your backyard, and not just any old bell, the kind of bell that you had seen up and down the highway.
The original 1906 that was in Whittier that I saw.
And you didn't steal it. You wanted to get one legally, right?
Yeah, I wanted to try and buy one somewhere.
So what did you do?
Well, I tried to track down a bell and I couldn't find anybody. And I had heard through the grapevine that the old owner of California Bell was still living, but nobody knew who he was or how old he was or anything.
Now wait a minute, this was the same company that Mrs. Forbes had started, but by now it had passed through a couple of different owners after she had died.
That's right. There was a gentleman in Pasadena or La Crescenta that had it, and it was defunct since around 1963.
All right, so how did you hook up with Max?
I found Max on the internet. He's a historian and author, written a couple of different books on bells in El Camino, and I got his name or his phone number and called him up, and he says, I think I might know who that guy is that has the California Bell Company. So Max made an arrangement, and we went over there, and it was just an unbelievable story from there.
What happened? You went over to buy a bell, and you ended up...
I bought the company.
You bought the whole company.
That's right.
That's a good business deal right there.
I didn't want to buy it.
What were you going to do? Wait, and I understand that there were a lot of bells there in this guy's garage or wherever his company was.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. Max and I went in there and we saw all these old molds and patterns to make all these bells. And he hadn't made them again since 1963. He made them from maybe 1953 to 1963. And he was 84 years old. And so he says, I won't sell you a bell, but I'll sell you the whole company.
My God. So you bought the company not really knowing what you were going to do with it. All you wanted was one bell.
You know, when I bought the thing, it was like one of those Christmas packages that in the store where it's wrapped up and it's a box and it's got a bow on it and you can't see what's inside of it. That's what he wanted me to buy. When we went over there, he opened his garage door. He could only get it up about a foot high, and he pulled out an El Camino Real bell, a full-size one. I said, I got to see what I'm buying. He says, that's all I can show you.
So you bought his company sight unseen.
I did.
But when you bought it, you got all the original patterns, all the bells that Mrs. Forbes had made starting back in 1906. You got the whole thing.
When Mrs. Forbes moved or sold the company to the second owners, a couple of ladies that made some bells for a while, some of her old bells were wrapped up in 1946 newspaper. It hadn't even been touched in years.
Wow.
So Joe Rice was the owner's name. He was 84 years old, and I didn't want to buy the company. I didn't need any more projects, but I knew if I didn't, it was all going to the junk dealer if he passed away.
Wow, what an amazing story. You were responsible for him buying the whole company.
That's right.
He was.
That's right.
He's the man.
All right, now the adventure continues, and we've been standing out here long enough. We're going to go inside because, believe me, it gets even better when you go inside. Let's walk in here. Okay, we are inside the foundry, and we are standing here, John, by this wonderful old, well, this isn't really a bell. This is
called a pattern, or this is a pattern, and they make the mold from it.
All right, so you acquired the company, and you got all the patterns, you got all the bells, you got everything.
I got everything, and when you have all this stuff, you figure, what am I going to do with it? So I thought, make some bells.
Making bells, and that's where this fella comes in. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Roy Covert at Covert Ironworks.
And this is this amazing foundry. This is like going back in time over here.
Pretty much.
We're going to actually make one of these original mission bells for everybody.
Yep.
Let's go over here and have you explain what's happening here. Now here's the fella right here who made this.
That's right. He made all the bells. He's Emilio Almeida, or molder.
He's the guy who makes the pattern, makes the mold.
He makes the sand mold. Every bell has its own mold, and after you pour the metal and you break it apart, so it's destroyed after every...
Nice to meet you, sir. Now you're going to fix it for us. This is very interesting. I've never seen anything like this.
It was made in two halves. They put a box around the pattern, and they filled that box with sand. It's chemically bonded.
With sand. This is very interesting to watch this, and this is basically being done the same way they would have done it back in 1906.
Pretty much. It's a sand casting. I mean, the bonding agent might be a little bit different. They probably made in green sand with a clay and water bond, and this is a chemical bond. More durable, stronger mold, but basically the same process.
Look at this. Oh, this is fascinating. So this sand comes in here and fills up over the mold.
Fill the entire box with sand, pack it in tight so it makes the impression of all the detail on the pattern.
And they've got the other half over there, so when they get through here,
they'll fill that one up.
They
the
fill
other half.
that one. Wow, this is the way it would have been done 200 years ago.
Absolutely, 2,000 years ago.
2,000 years ago.
It really hasn't changed much.
Wow, look at this. This is really something to see. I have never seen anything like this before in my life. That's black sand.
Yep.
Boy, this is something to watch. These guys are really artists, aren't they? Artisans.
They are. It takes a lot of practice. These guys have all been working here a long time.
Now, oh! Look, there's the impression. That's half a bell.
That's half a bell.
Where's the other half gonna come?
The other half is right over here. We're going to do the same thing. Roll that over, strip the pattern out.
Right upside down.
Then we put
put these two together?
We put the two. Before we do that, we set a core in place that makes the bell hollow.
Boy, this is a perfect. I mean, there's not a grain of sand out of place here.
That's the idea.
Now what's happening?
Now they're setting the core, which is creates the interior cavity of the mold, which makes the bell hollow. They'll give the wall thickness of the bell half an inch or whatever it is. And so the metal is poured around that core inside that cavity, and then you have the bell shape.
You know, I don't think most of us understand how this is done, do we?
Not really.
I mean, I had no idea.
But it's pretty simple, really, once you see it.
So you're going to put the other half right on top of this?
Right on top of that, and that one has the holes punched in the top to pour the metal into the mold.
So after that's done, we're ready to pour some metal.
We're ready to pour the metal.
Oh my gosh!
2,700 degrees.
Oh!
That's molten iron.
Boy, you can feel the heat.
You can feel it, you can see it, it's bright, it's constantly moving and churning.
You know, I've seen pictures of this, but I've never been up close to something like this. This is amazing.
This is the good part.
All right, here it comes. Well, I don't want to get too close to that.
He's going to skim the top one more time for any impurities that float to the top, because the iron's pretty dense, so all the impurities will float to the top. Any sand or refractory.
Now they're pouring from the big bucket into the little bucket.
That's right, the hand ladle, that's the ladle they pour into the mold with. One casting at a time.
How hot is that?
That's, it loses temperature. It's probably, when we finally pour into the mold, it's about 2650.
2650?
Maybe 2600.
Okay, here it goes into the mold. Oh, it's going into that little hole in the top.
Yep, and the mold's filling up. The weights keep the top half from floating off the bottom when the iron fills up the cavity.
That's what's making the bell right there.
We're making a bell, yeah. And it's full.
It's full. Whoa. Oh! There's the bell.
There's the bell. Still hot. The sand keeps the metal hot for a long time. It's a really good insulator, so that bell's going to stay hot while it's in the mold for a long time.
That took me off guard. He just dumped it out and broke the sand mold away from it.
And when you break the mold apart, pull out your casting and clean it up, and it's ready to go.
Come here and get a look at this. This is one hot bell right here. It's smoking, it's hot, and it's the real thing. Well, I hope he's got big, thick gloves on. That thing's hot.
He does.
Oh boy, that was quick.
Yep, knock off the gates. That's the part where the metal goes into the bell, so it just leaves the casting itself.
Oh,
Take the core
gosh.
out.
He just threw that on the ground.
Well, there's a little edge of flash around the outside, real thin edge where the metal where it hits the paste, and so that will knock that off. That's not part
So
of
he's
the
going
casting.
to knock off that rim on the outside.
Exactly. There's a little gap between the core and the casting that makes that little lip. So we'll grind the rest of that off or chip it off with a hammer. But that's not part of the casting.
Well, he knows what he's doing. Let's watch him. Oh.
He hasn't broken one yet.
I keep thinking he's going to break it.
Oh,
You
yeah,
answered
no.
my question. It seems like it's
I hate to have this one be the first one.
more fragile than it is. It's not fragile
No, it's cast
anymore,
iron.
is it?
No, it's not.
Pure cast iron.
Pretty solid stuff.
Now it really gets interesting because they brought the bell around and they're throwing it into this big machine. Now, what is this machine all about?
This is called a wheeler brader.
Wait a minute, a what?
A wheeler brader.
A wheeler brader.
Yeah, it's a shot blast machine. It'll shoot
Oh my
like little BBs and clean all the sand off the casting, so it's nice and shiny when it comes out.
So this is like a big clothes dryer.
Tumble it and spray it with steel shot.
And that's what kind of cleans it up.
And it comes in and it looks dirty and it'll cover with sand. When it comes out, it'll be nice and shiny and
How
clean.
long do they leave it in the
Wheeler brader.
wheeler brader?
A minute or two.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, time has passed, and Juan and Felix are now opening up the wheeler brader.
And we should have a clean bell.
This is amazing. Look at that. It's clean.
That's it, nice and shiny.
Wow.
And then from this point, all we have to do is grind the edges off, grind the flash off, and it's ready to ship.
Well, here they are, the finished El Camino Real bells. They're all wrapped up and ready to go. And John, I'm fast. This has been so amazing, I think, for all of us to see how you make bells. How did you choose this foundry to do your bells?
Well, this foundry's been known for making them. Roy's father made them. They've been making them for over 50 years from time to time.
Your father made these El Camino Real bells.
I believe so, yeah.
So this is nothing new for you. They've been churning them out here for a long time.
Making bells for a long time.
By this same method that is hundreds, if not thousands of years old.
Absolutely.
Well, they're wrapped up. How many bells we got in here, Roy?
Actually, these are 78.
78 bells,
Right.
shrink wrapped
Ready to go.
and ready to go. And the question is, where are these bells going?
Well, remember I told you I wanted to get them back up on the highway? That's where they're going.
Okay, the adventure continues, and right now we're on the side of the busy 101 freeway. We're in Calabasas in Ventura County, and of course, the 101 freeway is part of the original El Camino Real, and we are here for this part of the story with Keith Robinson from Caltrans. And Keith, this is very exciting. We're getting ready to see one of these beautiful big bells actually installed, and this is part of your passion in life, these old bells. Tell us how you got interested in it.
Well, when I was a little kid in the Bay Area growing up, visiting my grandmother, we used to see the bells on the El Camino Real. And as I started to get older, I saw the bells were disappearing. We weren't seeing any more of the markers on California's first transportation corridor. So that there's got to be something I can do about that with
All right,
Caltrans.
now what did you do? Well, you got a job at Caltrans. That was the start.
That was the start. Well, what I really did is I tried to figure out a way that we could get the bells back on the highway. So I researched and found that there was a federal grant program that would allow us to put back some historic markers. Applied for the grant, was successful, and now you see the bells are going back in place.
Now, when did this start?
This started about 6-7 years ago.
The rebelling of the El Camino Real. So what was your idea? What did you go to Caltrans with and tell them this is what I want to do?
Well, I said, you know, we have this system out here of bells that has disappeared. We're responsible for them. We need to get them back in place. The original vision of the original bell group was to put them 1 to 2 miles apart. We need to see if we can get back to that. Get a sense of place back for the El Camino Real. Get people to recognize that this is just as important for West Coast history as some of the things on the East Coast.
So you started putting the bells back, and how many bells do you have up now all over California?
Right now we have about 400 bells up, and by the end of the project we'll have almost 600 bells up.
Okay, and that covers the entire length of the original El Camino Real.
That's correct. The El Camino Real went from San Diego, as you know, up to Sonoma County. This project goes from San Francisco down to Orange County, end of Orange County. We didn't include San Diego because most of the El Camino is on City Street down there.
I got you.
Yes.
Now, how did you decide that you were going to put this bell at this particular spot on the 101?
The first priority is safety. We have to put the bells in a location where the motorist is less likely to hit the bell. So this is a very wide area. We can set the bell back away from the traveled way, so it's a very safe location. The second criteria was a scenic area if possible, so it looks attractive in its natural setting. This could look similar to this. It could have looked like this 100 years ago.
All right, this is getting ready to go up, and as you said, you want it to be somewhere too where when people are on the highway, they can look over and see it. That's the whole idea from your childhood, because you remember seeing them as a boy.
That's exactly right. I would suspect that most people don't realize they're traveling the El Camino Real, California's original road. Until when the bells go up, people really understand where they are.
And how excited, I mean, we're excited,
That's right.
but how excited do you get in a situation like this?
This is great. This has been a long effort. To see it actually happen is just incredible, absolutely incredible. We think it's something really that Californians will appreciate.
Max, what is it about the missions, the mission bells, the El Camino Real that make them such California icons?
Well, it's our history and our heritage, and just the idea of them being here. We can visit them, and we can live part of our history.
Yeah, it's like going back in time, because the missions are still here.
Yes.
The El Camino Real is still here, and the bells of the El Camino Real are still here.
Yes, that's what makes it so complete. It's a complete unit, complete thought, complete history, all at one time.
Yeah. They're really quite wonderful to stand here and hear the bells ringing out the same way they would have been ringing out when people were walking up and down the El Camino Real right out here in front of La Purísima Mission. All of this, the bells, the missions, the El Camino Real, all of them very much a part of California's gold.